UFOs. If we do finally make contact with aliens, how will it happen? Will they arrive in fantastic spacecraft, like the UFOs glimpsed recently above Mexico City? Will we pick up a faint signal from their corner of the universe? Or will we arrive too late and find the ruins of an ancient alien civilization? Making contact with aliens and UFOs, next. Even from a distance of 93 million miles, the sun is the source of all our bounty. Without its warming rays, the Earth would be a lifeless hunk of rock, orbiting silently in the vacuum of space. The ancients were well aware of the sun's importance. When the sky suddenly darkened during a solar eclipse, they thought it might be the end of the world.
Eclipses are a fine example of how the ancient person responded to an unexpected astronomical phenomenon, because eclipses were not predictable to the ancients. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know that it was the moon passing in front of the sun. They thought the sun was being devoured by some evil god. So throughout the world, people were frightened by this.
Gradually, science replaced superstition. In 1540, the Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus published his revolutionary theory that the sun, not the Earth, was the center of the solar system. In the early 1600s, Galileo improved the new scientific marvel, the telescope, enough to prove the Copernican theory was fact. In modern times, the rhythms of sun, moon, and Earth are well understood, so that a solar eclipse is the occasion for excitement rather than fear. And so it was that on July 11th, 1991, families around Mexico City gathered on street corners to witness one of the longest solar eclipses of the century. They brought telescopes and video cameras, but when they looked skyward, a surprise awaited.
The people were recording the eclipse when they saw UFOs in the sky, and they were able to record, at least in 3 different cities, exactly at the same time, the same kind of UFOs.
By 1:25 p.m., the sky had darkened, temperatures dropped, and something extraordinary still appeared in the skies above Mexico City. Jaime Maussan, producer of Mexico's equivalent of 60 Minutes, played some of the UFO videos on his program. They were taken at the same time from 3 different cities. The tapes ignited an immediate controversy. Critics charged that the purported UFO was nothing more than the planet Venus, which became visible during the total eclipse. In late July 1991, Maussan made an on-air request for more UFO videos. His viewers formed groups known as Los Vigilantes del Cielo, the Sky Watchers.
There are many dozens of these vigilantes all around the country, and that way we can survey the sky of Mexico very effectively. We have at least from 8 to 10,000 videos in Mexico. It's the largest collection ever. Probably not all of them are UFOs. Probably some of them are balloons, some others are airplanes, but many of them, probably 10 to 15% of them, are really good, mysterious objects, something that cannot be explained easily.
The object in this video moves in reverse, stops, and hovers, patterns of flight not associated with airplanes, birds, or weather balloons. On September 16, 1993, Mexico's Independence Day, a shimmering silver object seems to fly near a squadron of military helicopters that appeared in formation over the capital. Several UFOs have been reported near Popocatépetl, an active volcano that looms some 50 miles from Mexico City. The government keeps this camera permanently trained on the volcano, watching for eruptions. In June of 1999, it snapped this picture of a UFO. Some of the Mexico videos show large clusters of objects hovering in the sky. These formations resemble those filmed in the United States during July of 1952. However, no scientific comparison has yet been made.
We have basically a mass of seemingly good evidence that has yet to be sifted through by UFO investigators. It's too soon to tell whether or not videos were taken of actual UFOs, whatever they are, or whether some of these things are just hoaxes or, you know, things showing planets or airplanes flying by. We need more research into these particular sightings.
Some of the Mexican videos seem to be unexplainable at this time, but I won't go so far as to say that proves they're flying saucers. There's a difference between, I don't know what it was, and, oh, it's an alien spacecraft. I never make that leap. It's inappropriate to make that. What were its characteristics that rule out conventional explanations, even if you don't know what it was?
Of all the UFO episodes in Mexico, few caused the pervasive excitement shown in this video. The tape was made during an unprecedented multiple sighting, perhaps the most widely witnessed UFO incident in history.
In January 1st, 1994, Mexico City, the whole city stopped. I mean, stopped. People were driving cars and they stopped the car to look to the sky, and millions saw UFOs. This was in every newscast, in the television, in the radio. This news was reported in every single newspaper in Mexico City. An incredible event. An event that would demonstrate the presence of these objects, especially in this country. What is amazing for us, the Mexicans, is that nobody else around the world knew what happened in Mexico.
The wave of sightings, ongoing since 1991, is notable for both the astonishing number of videos it has produced and the willingness of Jaime Maussan and other journalists to treat the matter seriously.
I thought about it in 1991, if I wanted to do this, if I wanted to get involved with something so controversial as UFOs. But the truth is the truth, and if you like the truth, you go behind the truth. It doesn't matter how risky it is. And as a journalist, I want to have the big scoop of all times. And this is the biggest scoop of all times. It's risky, yes, you have to have courage. Yes, you have. But I think it's worth it.
However, according to at least one researcher, Mexico's UFOs are not the ultimate journalistic scoop, but byproducts of geological forces as old as time. UFOs have been playing hide-and-seek with Earthlings for decades. Even as we open the door to the 21st century, no one has proven where UFOs come from and just what it is they want. If cave paintings, biblical accounts, and Renaissance artworks can be taken at face value, the guessing game has actually gone on for thousands of years. But some investigators have advanced a fresh theory to explain UFOs. Simply put, they are not objects from outer space, but a whole spectrum of luminous phenomena that originate within the core of the Earth itself.
The Earth is a massively complex laboratory. There are an infinite number of forces that are interacting, and we really don't understand those as yet in any great depth. And the Earth does produce lights. It has its light show. And I think they're older than the human race. They belong to the very body of the Earth.
Among these exotic natural wonders are earthquake lights and ball lightning. Scientists believe that earthquake lights occur both before and after tremors, when gas released from within the Earth suddenly ignites and shoots sparks into the atmosphere. Ball lightning is believed to be an accumulation of static electricity that not only becomes visible, but is also capable of moving in the air and along hard surfaces. To those who have studied UFOs, however, even the most spectacular natural phenomenon can only explain a few unidentified flying objects.
When you look at the range of UFO reports that have been made over the years and thousands, presumably some small fraction of them, if they're under the right conditions, in the right place at the right time, some of these kinds of phenomena have to be considered. But by and large, from what I've read and what I've seen, they don't really fit.
In this ongoing debate, another type of naturally occurring luminous display is often cited to explain UFOs. They are known as Earth lights.
The characteristics that probably distinguish Earth lights from earthquake lights or ball lightning are that they tend to last for longer. And they often haunt particular areas like a valley, like a mountain. In China, for example, Mount Wutai-Shan and Mount Omai, there are temples that have been built specifically because light phenomena occur there. And the people who built the temples thought these lights were an expression of the Dharma. But that indicates to you how long lights were seen in that area, centuries.
Despite such ancient traditions, no one can explain exactly how Earth lights are created.
We are testing theories, and one of the strongest contenders is that tectonic stresses in the Earth, through the Earth's geology, not necessarily related actually to an earthquake, though it can be, that these stresses produce tremendous force fields, and that through whatever mechanisms we don't really understand yet, plasmas are produced.
Proponents of this naturalistic theory suggest that plasmas, luminous clusters of charged particles, explain even the most well-known UFO sightings.
And I should also say, if we go back to Kenneth Arnold's flight over the Cascade Mountains, he saw 9 objects of light. And at that time, the Cascade Mountains, which we know are tectonically volatile, they were building up to their largest earthquake ever recorded at that time.
On April 4th, 1949, Seattle, Washington crumbled under the impact of that earthquake. However, it hit more than 18 months after Kenneth Arnold's sighting. Could there have been a link?
Sounds good. Yes, luminous phenomena produced by earthquakes. Yes, people see sometimes luminous phenomena around flying saucers. Fine, that doesn't make a cause and effect connection at all.
Yet according to the Earth lights theory, masses of plasma do exhibit some of the distinctive qualities of UFOs.
The interesting thing about these plasmas is that at night they will shine. They will be your lights in the sky. But in daylight, a plasma can seem to reflect light and look metallic.
But are qualities of reflectivity and a metallic appearance enough to equate plasmas with UFOs?
If they're going to talk natural phenomenon, what is there out there that has the capability to hover and then shuts off and then the object zooms straight up out of sight? There's no technology like that we know about. And there's certainly no natural phenomenon that does this kind of thing. This ain't nothing we're familiar with. This is something very strange.
In order to be mistaken for UFOs, these natural Earth-like plasmas would have to display some extraordinary capabilities, like those witnessed in 1980 at Bentwaters Air Base, or in 1967 near the Canadian town of Shag Harbor.
Well, some of them can sit on the water and have been observed going underneath water as well. Some just come out of the ground, that's where they come from initially, and some of them will just sit there, or some will flash off over the hill and come down again, earth themselves again.
According to its proponents, the Earthlight phenomenon is the best and the only explanation for UFOs.
I think if we understand Earthlight and all the range of phenomena associated with them, quantum physics and plasma physics will literally take a quantum leap. They will literally move ahead a decade, probably one fell swoop.
Still, UFO researchers point out what they see as a fatal flaw in the plasma Earthlight theory.
We have to look at the characteristics of the earthquake lights or the plasmas or ball lightning or any of these things. How do they move? What color are they? What size are they? These are important considerations. Then look at the same data for UFOs. Well, the typical even landed saucer is 10 to 30 feet in diameter. These plasma phenomena are literally this big. So it's the careful consideration of what are the characteristics. If you're trying to explain this with this, they have to match.
Perhaps not surprisingly, the ongoing wave of Mexico City UFOs has been swept up in this controversy. Many of the mysterious lights appeared in the vicinity of the nearby volcano, Popocatépetl. It is a matter of record that the long-dormant volcano suddenly became active, precisely at the time the sightings began. During a research trip to Mexico in August of 1999, Paul Devereaux visited the ancient city of Teotihuacan, some 50 miles from the volcano, and theorized about the connection.
This place is very active and volatile in a tectonic fashion. And what we found that these earthlights do frequent areas where there are active surface tectonic geological faults. And this is a prime location for that phenomenon to occur. And I think is one of the elements bound up into the whole Mexican UFO wave.
The questions of whether UFOs are real or if life exists elsewhere in the universe may not be resolved by earthbound debate. There is, however, another approach. Build a rocket, blast off, and see for ourselves. Ancient civilizations who weren't yet blessed by the invention of electricity enjoyed at least one compensation. Their pristine night skies sparkled with 1 million stars. Early astronomers soon noticed that a handful of heavenly bodies traveled freely in the sky, unbound by the stars' slow, methodical rotation. The Greeks called them planets, a word meaning wanderer. In modern times, when Earthlings began to ponder the question of UFOs and alien civilization, it was the planet Mars that became the focus of attention. If there truly were flying saucers, it was thought they would come from the mysterious red planet. In part, this belief stemmed from observations made by astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli in 1877. He claimed that Mars was laced with channels, canali in Italian, that linked the planet's polar ice caps. Schiaparelli's canali became known as canals, and some said they were not simply natural waterways.
An American astronomer named Lowell thought that these were canals that were artificially created by an alien civilization, and he began studying Mars extensively and writing books about the civilization on Mars that created these structures. And so a lot of people began thinking then about how you would communicate with the Martians.
The widespread public belief that Martians were real became clear when 32 million people gathered around their radios in October of 1938.
We interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead.
Millions believed that the H.G. Wells radio drama War of the Worlds was a real report of a Martian invasion. The result was widespread panic. The director, Orson Welles, was unaware that his production would strike a nerve.
I'm, of course, surprised that the H.G. Wells classic, which is the original for many fantasies about invasions by mythical monsters from the planet Mars had such an immediate and profound effect upon radio listeners.
While the public was captivated by stories about Mars, a lone American pioneer named Robert Goddard was experimenting with ways of actually getting there.
Goddard had come up with ingenious designs for getting rockets from the surface of the Earth up into the high atmosphere, but this was widely regarded as a bunch of silly nonsense by American scientists. However, in Germany, he had some fans, people like Werner von Braun, who were reading his research, and they then were inspired to implement his designs and improve upon them in Germany, and this led during World War II to the development of the V-2 rocket, which is the predecessor for basically the American and Russian space programs.
With the launch of America's Viking space probe in June of 1975, the age-old dream of exploring Mars finally became a reality. A vehicle known as a lander actually touched down on the surface of Mars July 20th, 1976. The Viking mission showed that the surface of Mars is pockmarked with craters, like those on Earth's moon. There were also some indications that life may have existed on Mars in distant times.
My personal feeling is that yes, Mars had a very substantial atmosphere early on with a lot of liquid water on the surface, and perhaps enough to form these river channels and river valleys that we see that are quite ancient, that are perhaps older than 3 billion years old. So the issue of the ancient climate of Mars is an important one for the issue of whether life could evolve. I think you can start to persuade yourself that the possibility of life could be somewhat reasonable, actually, and particularly if you accept the postulate that if life can exist, it will exist.
The life on Mars debate heated up again with the release of this picture, taken by Viking on July 25th, 1976. It appears to show a giant monument, a mile-long structure that resembles a human head. It became known as the face on Mars. NASA has no official position on whether the face is a natural feature or a colossal sculpture. Still, those who worked on the Viking mission have been accused of hiding the discovery of a Martian civilization.
I can't think of a group that would have publicized that possibility or that discovery more than those of us who were looking at the pictures. We were looking for stuff like that. Our careers would have been made. We would have loved to have trumpeted to the world that we found evidence of an ancient Martian civilization. Who the heck wouldn't? And after somebody pointed that out, those of us on the lander team looked at one of the boulders on the surface nearby the lander, and we decided we could see the initials of every team member in the boulder that was about 10 feet away from the lander.
NASA is currently building vehicles that will orbit and land on Mars in the next decade, in preparation for a daring attempt to send astronauts to the planet in 2018. But recent discoveries have allowed scientists to study Mars right here at home. During the 1980s and 90s, NASA plucked a dozen meteorites from the icy expanse of Antarctica, and then made the remarkable announcement that they were nothing less than small fragments of the planet Mars.
You might reasonably wonder, how do we know that a particular rock that we find on the Earth is from Mars? And the reason is we've been to Mars with the Viking landers, so we have actual measurements of the chemical composition of the Martian atmosphere, and we find that in these dozen rocks that there are the chemical signature of the atmosphere of Mars. It's not quite like Earth air, it's just like Martian air, and that's how we know they really are from Mars.
Scientists believe the rocks were blasted off Mars 16 million years ago when an asteroid collided with the planet. The meteorites made their way here, finally landing on Earth about 13,000 years later. After gathering and analyzing these otherworldly stones, researchers released some astonishing results.
One of those rocks was the Martian meteorite that some scientists claimed had evidence of Martian microbes on it. This has been greatly debated among scientists, and I would say today the consensus is moving in the direction of skepticism. That is, most scientists who've looked at the question think that the little objects that are seen under the microscope are probably not from living things that were produced by some non-biological process. But there are still a few scientists who find evidence in the chemistry and in the structure that maybe these were microbes after all. So it's still an open question.
And the important thing out of all of this is not so much whether these particular meteorites have actual biological material in them, but it's opened people's minds to at least accept the possibility that this may be something that could occur, and has opened this area for legitimate study.
Jupiter's frozen moon, Europa, may also be able to support life. In 1996, images transmitted by the spacecraft Galileo showed that Europa has an ocean containing more water than all of the Earth's oceans combined. And according to scientists, where there is water, there can be life.
There could be volcanic activity down under a liquid water ocean, and it's possible even that volcanic activity is helping to keep that liquid water layer there. If that's true, then you can start to think about biological systems that relate to the kinds of systems we have on the Earth. It's all highly speculative, of course, but it's the kind of thing that drives us as scientists to want to know more about a place like Europa.
Ultimately, these interplanetary missions bolster the theory that life is not unique to Earth, a fundamental assumption if UFOs are to be taken seriously.
I think it strengthens the hand of the people who believe that life is fairly commonplace within the galaxy and within the universe, because now we don't have just one example, we've got two or more examples nearby. So that's why this becomes of profound importance, perhaps one of the most profoundly important things that man has ever done.
Despite the promise of discovering life in distant galaxies, current rocket technology may put the brakes on expeditions into deep space. It would simply take too long to get there. The Voyager 2 spacecraft was the fastest vehicle ever built by humans, but it still took 9 years to reach the planet Uranus, merely halfway to the edge of the solar system. To reach stars where life-supporting planets might be found, even Voyager would require a journey of 100,000 years. In the face of such daunting realities, science has come up with another way of reaching out to alien civilizations. Aim a hypersensitive radio antenna to the heavens and hope to strike up a long-distance conversation. It was in 1896 that an Italian engineer named Guglielmo Marconi hooked up some electrical parts in an inspired combination. Then he sent a signal roughly 1 mile, not over wires, but directly through thin air. Marconi refined his invention, and in 1901 he sent the first radio broadcast across the Atlantic Ocean. A message that would have taken Christopher Columbus several months to deliver could now be sent in the blink of an eye. Within a few decades, radio had taken its place at the center of modern life. Sports, politics, entertainment, and commerce were revolutionized by the ability of sound and music to travel magically through the air.
People began listening for Martians. They began to wonder, is there a Martian civilization that might be signaling to us? People like Marconi listened for these, and they occasionally announced that they had discovered signals from Mars. We now think that that was probably wrong, because there was a type of signal that they were probably picking up that they didn't know about then, but we now understand. This is a strange kind of signal called a whistler. It's produced by lightning, but it's lightning that's been transformed by the Earth's atmosphere into a strange signal that sounds just like a whistle. Like that. And so you get what sounds like an artificial signal, but it isn't.
The intergalactic eavesdropping continues today, but with far more powerful receivers. These are radio telescopes pointed toward the heavens in a search for faint signals from outer space. Some physicists believe they may well hold our best chance of contact with intelligent beings from other planets. At Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Earth's most sophisticated detector in the search for life in outer space is being updated in a laboratory. It will look for answers to one of humanity's oldest questions: is anybody out there? The project is headed by Dr. Paul Horowitz.
First and foremost, for a signal generated by an intelligent species somewhere else, we have to guess what kind of signal that might be. First of all, is it light? Is it radio waves? Is it particles? Best guess is it's radio waves. Best guess amongst the radio wave possibilities are microwaves. What kind of signal there? It's anyone's guess. Some people believe a carrier, a single long transmission, a transmitter left on, probably saying nothing, just saying I'm here.
Of course, radio has been around for over 100 years, but only in the last decade have computers become powerful enough for SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Specialized chips and circuit boards comprise the brain of the radio telescope system. It will process the stream of signals captured by a giant antenna.
Our search uses an 84-foot steerable radio telescope. Looks like a backyard satellite dish, but much bigger. It can collect rather weak signals and concentrate them at the focus. There we have some very sensitive amplifiers, the best that can be made these days, to strengthen that very weak signal.
The tiny signals will be transmitted through cables into the control room, where an array of computers will sort through the cosmic noise, looking for a deliberate signal, a sign of intelligent life.
Occasionally we find strange signals there, really interesting signals that look like the kind of thing that might be produced artificially by another civilization. But if you got a repeat of the signal at the same frequency and the same point in the sky, that would tell you it was not a random event on the surface of the Earth or inside of your computer. We would have to say that it's most likely being produced by another civilization some distance away. The problem is none of these signals has ever repeated, but it's enough to keep us intrigued and wanting to continue.
But what are the odds that we will get a signal from some exotic civilization?
That there's other life in the universe, guaranteed. That there's other life in the galaxy, guaranteed. Any odds you like, absolutely cannot be any other way. That there's advanced life somewhere in the universe, guaranteed. Somewhere else in the galaxy, so extremely probable that I would give you at least 100 to 1 odds that interstellar communication could well be taking place.
Even with these unbeatable odds, the quest for radio contact faces at least one possibly insurmountable obstacle.
A lot of people, both scientists and people who are critical of SETI, have said maybe an advanced civilization would use some equipment that's far beyond anything we could possibly know about, and so SETI isn't even worth doing. And that's possible. It could be that there's some technique for communicating across the distances between stars that we have no conception of and we will not be able to do for 1,000 years. But they probably thought about this too. And they probably went into their museum and they said, what did we use 1,000,000 years ago in the primitive part of our civilization to communicate across distances? And they said, oh, there's this thing they used to call radio. And that's what we could use if we wanted to communicate with a primitive civilization that doesn't know the advanced stuff that we know. So I'm hoping that they're using the galactic equivalent of Boy Scout technology to send a signal that a civilization as primitive as we are could detect.
If such a scenario plays out, we may be able to achieve distant rather than close encounters with extraterrestrial beings. Dr. Horowitz believes that one day, SETI will indeed receive a message from other intelligent life in the universe.
And this will be quite an event. This will be the first bridge across 4 billion years of independent life start and evolution. It'll be the end of Earth's cultural isolation in a galaxy and a universe containing surely millions of other civilizations. It will be, without doubt, the greatest discovery in the history of humankind.
Until that broadcast is received, we remain the eyes and ears of the universe, ever alert for a tiny signal that tells us we are not alone. However, during the 1980s, some UFO researchers came to believe that there were abundant signs right here on Earth that visitors from outer space had made contact. The clues were the so-called crop circles, large and often intricate patterns carved into fields of grain across Britain.
Crop circles were connected to the UFO phenomena beginning in the early 80s, soon after they appeared in England, because people figured round marks on the ground, gee, they're like UFO traces that UFOs have left before, so why not UFOs causing these things? Because they are mysterious, they can't seem to find the source of them.
These mysterious forms began to appear in Bratton, Wiltshire, England, around 1980. Farmers here called the simple shapes corn circles and wrote them off as a quirk of nature. But the months and years that followed brought an explosion of new sightings. Crop circle magazines soon emerged to publicize the elaborate and beautiful patterns that were now visiting other crops. Researchers who call themselves cereologists stepped in to catalog these strange patterns and discover common traits. But are crop circles evidence of alien visitors? To solve the mystery, a commercial film company in England undertook a nighttime stakeout of a cornfield in Wiltshire in 1991. It was here that filmmakers made a startling discovery. Thermal imaging equipment revealed the faint outline of humanoid shapes moving in a circle. The shapes were in fact quite human. They belonged to a pair of Englishmen named Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley. Doug and Dave claimed responsibility for dozens of the complex patterns that had caused so much mystery. Many circles, the twosome pointed out, were even signed with their initials, D and D.
The circles that we created in 1978 with the standing walls of corn as if they'd been cut out of pastry with a knife, they were our doing, and we started it way back in that time.
However, numerous crop circles have now been observed in Canada and the United States, in addition to those that continue to appear all across England.
Doug and Dave didn't make those. They would have to have been lickety-split all over the planet. Having said that, that doesn't mean I find a UFO connection. There really aren't any good cases of people seeing the saucer making the crop circle. It's another one of these interesting anomalies that should be studied at the university level and isn't being.
Even without crop circles, most UFO researchers believe that unexplained photos and irrefutable eyewitness testimony make the case that UFOs are real and visiting Earth with alarming regularity. Virtually all of us have heard of UFOs, but relatively few of us have ever seen one. How are we to pass judgment on the question of whether or not they are real? Making such a decision is like being a juror and weighing evidence on one of the most important issues facing humanity. Perhaps UFOs are nothing more than hoaxes or mistaken observations, but if they are real, they have to come from someplace. The universe offers infinite possibilities. If there is life out there, it may well have gotten going long before we did. Indeed, Zeta Reticuli, a pair of stars often mentioned as having planets that might support life, is known to be about 1 billion years older than the Earth.
The thing we need to keep in perspective, they've only had fancy technology, call it 100 years. Well, the Zeta Reticulans got a billion-year head start. Let's be conservative. Let's suppose they only got a million-year head start. Let's be truly conservative and say they only got a 10,000-year head start, which is nothing out of the billion years available. Surely we would all agree that we can't even imagine the advanced technology there.
If some advanced civilization built spacecraft that can actually whisk them through the universe, why would they want to visit a primitive galactic backwater like Earth?
One can only postulate that they're concerned about their own survival and security. At the end of World War II, there were 3 signs visible to any alien visitor that soon this primitive society whose major activity is tribal warfare would be bothering them.
Rockets, radar, and nuclear weapons were three signs that Earthlings might soon be a force to contend with in the interstellar neighborhood. If there are other civilizations in the universe, perhaps they felt the need to keep a watchful eye on potentially threatening developments here on Earth.
There had been many, many sightings over air bases in the West, over classified atomic installations. They were not just randomly distributed, but they did seem to concentrate, at least in the early years, on places where experimental research was being done, this kind of thing.
Statistically, astronomers know that there's life out there somewhere, and the chances of it being intelligent life is debatable, but it's possible that somewhere in the universe there are creatures like us. Now, whether they're coming here is a very tricky question because we don't have the physical evidence. We don't have the chunk of saucer in our hand, and abductees haven't brought back a towel from the Zeta Reticuli Hilton. We don't have any of the good stuff that definitely proves that somebody has been here.
What the UFO case lacks in physical evidence, it makes up for in solid eyewitnesses. The Air Force UFO investigations from 1948 to 1969 cataloged some 12,000 sightings. Most were explained, but 700 accounts from credible witnesses remain a mystery, despite all the Air Force efforts to explain them.
They used all kinds of tricks to misrepresent what the results were, always focusing on only 700 couldn't be explained. Only? If I was looking for cures for cancer and I looked at 12,000 chemicals, would I say there is no cure because only 700 worked? The point is to find one.
But even accounts from seemingly unimpeachable eyewitnesses are not enough, at least when the subject is UFOs.
When you get down to it, what we have always is a story. I saw something. I saw a light in the sky. I saw a crashed flying saucer. And a story is mythology. It is not in and of itself proof.
Yet videos and photographs add powerful support to eyewitness accounts of UFOs. Many photos have been examined by experts who have found no evidence of fraud or alteration. However, if it can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt that UFOs are real, we have only unleashed a new problem.
The UFO phenomenon is a great challenge to our intellect, but even more, it's a challenge to our humility. That mankind likes to think he's in control. And if we take this subject seriously, we realize we're not. And I believe that mankind, across cultures, is fundamentally in psychological denial on this subject. We don't know how to cope with it emotionally. We can't even begin to grasp it intellectually.
Perhaps UFOs will one day be revealed as top-secret fighter planes, more advanced and alien-looking than the F-117. Or UFOs may prove to be nothing more exotic than birds or weather balloons, as laughable as our ancestors' belief in witches and sea serpents. Of course, it is entirely possible that UFOs are exactly what they seem to be. Alien aircraft from parts unknown. For the time being, at least, the truth about UFOs is in the eye of the beholder.